The morning on New Bizen started like any other morning. Children ran to school with bags on their backs. Workers drank their coffee and complained about traffic. Old men sat in parks and talked about the weather. It was a peaceful colony, home to 2,300,000 humans who had built their lives far from Earth. Captain Lee Min-ho stood on the bridge of the colony ship, Horizon's Promise, watching the sun rise over the city below. He had been stationed here for 3 years. He knew the bakers who made fresh bread every morning. He knew the teachers who taught history to young children. He knew the doctors, the farmers, the engineers. They were good people living simple lives on the edge of human space. He did not know that in less than 1 hour, most of them would be dead. The first warning came at exactly 7:14 in the morning. A junior officer shouted that unknown ships had entered the system. Lee Min-ho turned to look at his screen and felt his blood turn cold. There were hundreds of them. Velthari warships moving in perfect formation toward the colony. The Velthari were not friends of humanity. They were an old species, proud and military. They believed humans expanded too fast, took too much space, talked too loud in the halls of the Galactic Council. But they were members of the Federation. They followed rules. They did not attack without warning. Lee Min-ho opened a communication channel. His voice was calm, even though his hands were shaking. He asked the Velthari fleet to identify themselves and state their purpose. The response came in a cold, flat voice. The Velthari commander said only 4 words before cutting the channel-border dispute. Commence cleansing. Lee Min-ho had exactly 3 minutes to understand what was happening. In those 3 minutes, he sent emergency signals to Earth. He ordered civilian ships to evacuate. He told his small defense fleet to prepare for battle. He knew they could not win. He knew they would all die. But he also knew that he had to try. The Velthari did not wait. Their weapons fired, and the sky above New Bizen turned white with death. The defense fleet lasted 11 minutes. Lee Min-ho watched his ships explode one by one. Good men and women, gone in flashes of light. He ordered the Horizon's Promise to hold position, even as missiles tore through its hull. He would not run. He would not leave his people. On the ground, the real horror began. Velthari soldiers landed in the city center. They did not come to occupy. They did not come to negotiate. They came to kill. They walked through the streets with weapons raised, shooting everyone they saw. Men, women, children. It did not matter. They killed them all. A young mother named Shin Yunji tried to hide her 2 daughters in a basement. A Velthari soldier found them. He looked at the crying children and laughed. Then he pulled the trigger dot. An old teacher named Han Dongwoo stood in front of his students with his arms spread wide. He begged for mercy. He said they were only children. The soldiers shot him first, then shot every child behind him. A doctor named Bae Sumin tried to save the wounded in her clinic. Velthari soldiers walked in and executed every patient in their beds. Then they shot her 2. The killing went on for hours. The Velthari were not in a hurry. They walked calmly through the burning city, checking buildings, finding survivors, ending lives. Some of them recorded videos. Some of them smiled. One soldier was heard saying that humans died just like animals. Captain Lee Min-ho saw all of this through the cameras that still worked. His ship was dying. Fire filled the corridors. His crew lay dead around him. But he was still alive, and he had one last duty to perform. He activated the emergency broadcast system. With broken hands and blood running down his face, he compiled every piece of footage he could find. Every camera. Every recording. Every image of Velthari soldiers murdering innocent people. He put it all together and sent it toward Earth with a single message attached. Remember us. Do not forgive. Then a Velthari missile hit the bridge, and Lee Min-ho joined his people in death. The transmission traveled through space at faster than light speed. It reached Earth in 6 hours. It reached the desk of Ambassador Kim Yuna while she sat in her office at the Galactic Council headquarters. Kim Yuna was a diplomat. She had spent 20 years building bridges between species, solving problems with words, believing that peace was always possible. She opened the transmission expecting a routine report. What she saw broke something inside her. She watched children being shot in the streets. She watched families burned alive in their homes. She watched soldiers laughing as they killed. She watched Lee Min-ho's final moments, his bloody face, his steady voice, his refusal to give up even as death came for him. She watched her people die. For a long time, she could not move. Then she stood up, walked to the Galactic Council chamber, and demanded an emergency session. She played the footage for every ambassador in the room. She let them see what the Velthari had done. The reactions were strange. Some ambassadors looked uncomfortable. Some looked bored. One actually yawned. The Rithian High Counselor, a thin being named Tovin, spoke first. He said the council would form an investigative committee. The committee would study the incident for 3 to 5 years. If the Velthari were found guilty of wrongdoing, sanctions would be considered. Kim Yuna stared at him. She asked if he understood what he had just seen. She asked if he understood that 2 million people were dead. She asked if he understood that this was not a border dispute, but a massacre. Tovin looked at her with something like pity. He said that these things were complicated. He said that the Velthari probably had reasons. He said that humans were new to the galaxy and did not understand how things worked. He said that she should remain calm and trust the process. Kim Yuna looked around the room. She saw no anger. She saw no horror. She saw only bureaucrats who had never known loss, who had never buried their dead, who had never felt the fire of grief burning in their chests. She understood then that the galaxy would not help them. The galaxy did not care. She sent a message to Earth with only one word. War. On Earth. President Choi Sun-woo received her message. He watched the footage from New Bizin. He sat alone in his office for 1 hour. When he came out, his face was hard as stone. He called a meeting with General Beekhagen, the commander of all human military forces. The general arrived within minutes. He had already seen the footage. He already knew what the president would say. They did not waste time with speeches. The general placed a folder on the president's desk. Inside was a plan that had been prepared for decades, waiting for a day that everyone hoped would never come. The president opened the folder and began to read. Far away. In the Galactic Council, the ambassadors returned to their normal business. They had already forgotten about New Bizin. They did not know that humanity was about to remind them. The footage spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Every screen on every world showed the same images. Parents covered their children's eyes, but they could not cover their own. They watched. They all watched. And something changed in the heart of humanity. President Choi Sun-woo had not slept in 30 hours. He sat at the head of a long table in the deepest room of the government building in Seoul. Around him sat the most powerful people in human space: generals, admirals, scientists, leaders of colonies scattered across 100 worlds. They had all seen the footage. They had all cried. Now their tears had dried, and only cold anger remained. General Beekhagen stood at the front of the room. He was an old soldier, gray-haired and scarred from battles fought long ago against human enemies. He had hoped to never fight again. But as he looked at the faces around him, he knew that hope was dead. He began to speak. His voice was calm and steady. He explained that the military had prepared for this possibility for 50 years. They had built ships in secret. They had developed weapons that no other species knew about. They had trained soldiers for wars they prayed would never come. All of this was ready. All of this was waiting. The president asked how long it would take to mobilize. The general answered that the first fleet could launch within 1 week. Full military strength would be ready within 1 month. The president nodded slowly. A young advisor raised her hand. She asked if they had considered diplomacy. Perhaps the Galactic Council would help if they waited. Perhaps sanctions would be enough. Perhaps war was too extreme. The room fell silent. President Choi Sun-woo looked at her for a long moment. Then he asked her a simple question. He asked if she had watched the footage. He asked if she had seen the children. He asked if she had heard the Velthari soldiers laughing. The advisor lowered her head. She had no answer. Dr. C.O. Nari, the lead scientist of Earth's Weapons Division, spoke next. She was a small woman with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She explained what her team had created over the decades. Energy weapons that could cut through Velthari shields. Ships that could move faster than anything in the galaxy. Armor that could survive hits that would destroy alien vessels. The technology had been kept secret because humanity knew they were young in a dangerous universe. They had always feared a day like this would come. The president asked if these weapons were ready. Dr. C.O. Nari said yes. They had always been ready. The meeting lasted 4 more hours. Every option was discussed. Every risk was calculated. Every voice was heard. In the end, the vote was unanimous. There would be no negotiation. There would be no waiting. There would be war. Ambassador Kim Yuna returned to Earth that same day. She had resigned from her position at the Galactic Council. She walked into the president's office with fire in her eyes. She told him what the council had said. She told him about the committee. She told him about the 3 to 5 years of investigation. She told him about the ambassador who had yawned while watching children die. The president listened in silence. When she finished, he asked her one question. He asked if she was ready to help him send a message to the galaxy. She said yes. The broadcast was scheduled for the next morning. Every human world would watch. Every alien world would receive the transmission. The galaxy would hear humanity's answer. That night, no one slept on Earth. Families gathered around screens. Soldiers reported to their stations. Ships powered up their engines. The entire species held its breath and waited. At exactly 9 in the morning, Earth time, President Choi Sun-woo stepped in front of the cameras. He wore a simple black suit. His face was calm. His eyes were hard. Behind him stood Ambassador Kim Yuna, General Beek Hajian, and 12 other leaders representing every human world. He began to speak. To the people of Earth and all human colonies. He said, "You have seen what happened to New Bezan. You have seen our brothers and sisters murdered. You have seen our children shot in the streets. You have seen the Velthari laugh as they killed. There are no words for such evil. There is no forgiveness for such crimes." He paused and looked directly into the camera. To the Galactic Federation. He continued, "We came to you asking for justice. We showed you the blood of our people. We asked you to help us find those responsible. You offered us a committee. You offered us paperwork. You told us to wait. You told us to trust the process. We have heard your answer. Now hear ours." He took a deep breath. To the Velthari Empire. He said, "You attacked a peaceful colony. You murdered 2,300,000 innocent people. You called it a border dispute. You called it cleansing. You laughed while you killed. We do not call it a border dispute. We call it what it is. Murder. His voice grew stronger. Humanity has one rule that we have followed since the beginning of our history. We do not abandon our own. We do not forget our dead. We do not forgive those who murder the innocent. As of this moment, the United Earth government formally declares war On the Velthari Empire. The words echoed across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, aliens stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens in disbelief. War. The humans had declared war. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. No species had declared war in 4,000 years. The president was not finished. This war will end in one of two ways, he said. Either every individual responsible for New Bizan will stand trial for their crimes, or they will die. There will be no negotiation. There will be no peace talks. There will be no sanctions. There will be justice. He leaned forward to the Velthari commanders who gave the orders. We are coming for you. To the soldiers who pulled the triggers, we are coming for you. To the leaders who approved this massacre, we are coming for you. Run if you want. Hide if you can. It will not matter. We will find you. We will judge you. And we will make you answer for what you did. He stood straight again to the galaxy. He said, you may call us primitive. You may call us emotional. You may say that war is uncivilized. We do not care what you think. We care about our people. We care about our dead. We care about justice. And we will have it, no matter the cost. He looked at the camera one final time. New Bizan will be avenged. The transmission ended. Across human space, the response was immediate. Millions of people volunteered for military service. Factories began producing weapons. Scientists worked without sleep. Ships launched from every colony, gathering into fleets larger than anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. On Velthari Prime, Commander Veth watched the human broadcast with a smile on his face. He told his officers that humans were weak. He said they would break at the first real battle. He said this war would be over in weeks. He was wrong. On the Galactic Council, High Counselor Tovin called an emergency meeting. He begged the other species to intervene. He warned that humanity was dangerous. He said they had to be stopped. No one listened. No one wanted to stand between humanity and the Velthari. The galaxy had seen the footage too. They knew what the Velthari had done. And secretly, some of them wanted to see what would happen next. Ambassador Kim Yuna watched the chaos from her ship as it flew toward Earth. She thought about the council members who had told her to remain calm. She thought about their cold eyes and bored faces. They would not be bored for long. The Galactic Council had not seen such chaos in 1,000 years. Ambassadors rushed through corridors, speaking in urgent whispers. Emergency meetings were called and canceled. Reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. Everyone was asking the same question. What were the humans doing? High Counselor Tovin stood in his private chamber, watching the latest reports on his screen. Human fleets were gathering. Human factories were producing weapons at impossible speeds. Human colonies were sending their young people to fight. The entire species was transforming itself into a war machine, and it was happening faster than anyone thought possible. He did not understand. The Velthari had killed colonists. Colonists. People who lived on the edge of space, far from Earth, far from the human homeworld. Why would humans fight and die for strangers? Why would they risk everything for people they had never met? He called a meeting with ambassadors from 12 different species. They sat in a circle and tried to make sense of what was happening. The Corvani ambassador spoke first. Her species was known for logic and calculation. She said that war made no strategic sense. The Velthari Empire was powerful. Humans would lose many lives, many ships, many resources. The cost was too high for such a small gain. The Mithran ambassador agreed. His species valued survival above all else. He said that smart species cut their losses. The colonists were already dead. Fighting would not bring them back. Humans should accept the loss and move forward. The Pelori ambassador was confused for a different reason. Her species lived in isolated family groups. She asked why humans cared about colonists at all. They were not from the same family. They were not from the same city. Some were not even from the same planet. What connection could they possibly feel? Tovin listened to all of them. He realized that none of them understood. None of them could understand. Humans were different in a way that the galaxy had never seen before. Far across space, on the human colony of New Sol, Ensign Huang Dayan packed her bag and prepared to report for duty. She was 22 years old. She had joined the Navy because she wanted to explore the stars. She had never expected to fight in a war. Her mother stood at the door, crying. She begged her daughter to stay. She said the government could not force her to go. She said there were ways to avoid service. Dayan held her mother's hands and looked into her eyes. She told her that she had to go. She told her about the footage from New Bizon. She told her about the children who had died. She told her about Captain Lee Minho and his final message. They were ours, she said. That is enough. Her mother did not understand, but she let her daughter go. On Velthary Prime, Commander Veth prepared his fleet for battle. He was confident, almost cheerful. He told his officers that humans were emotional creatures who made decisions with their hearts instead of their heads. Such species were easy to defeat. You only had to hurt them enough, and they would surrender. He showed his officers the human war history. He pointed out how humans had fought each other for thousands of years. They killed each other over religion, over land, over ideas. They were violent and primitive. But they also had a breaking point. Every human war eventually ended with negotiation. All the Velthary had to do was hold firm and wait. His officers laughed and agreed. They had seen the human military numbers. Humans had fewer ships, fewer soldiers, less experience in space combat. This would be an easy victory. Commander Veth sent a message to the human fleet. He offered them a chance to surrender. He promised that if they withdrew, the Velthary would consider peace talks. He was being generous, he said. He was giving them a way out. Admiral Park Tayo received the message on his flagship. He read it once, then deleted it without responding. The human fleets continued to gather. Ships arrived from every colony, joining together into the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Admiral Park Tayo looked at the fleet around him and felt something he had not felt in years: pride. These were not professional soldiers. Many of them were farmers, teachers, engineers, doctors. They had left their lives behind to fight for people they had never known. They had kissed their families goodbye without knowing if they would ever return. They were not warriors by nature, but they had become warriors by choice. Dr. Zio Nari arrived on the flagship with their team of scientists. They brought weapons that the Velthary had never seen. Energy cannons that could pierce any shield. Missiles that could think and hunt. Armor that could absorb damage and heal itself. These were the secret tools of humanity, built over decades for a war they had hope. Ed would never come. Admiral Park Tayo inspected the weapons personally. He asked Dr. Seo Nari if she was certain they would work. She looked at him with tired eyes and said that she had tested them 1,000 times. They would work. The Velthary would learn what humanity could do when pushed too far. Back on the Galactic Council, the other species watched and waited. They had chosen not to intervene. Officially, they said it was because the Federation did not involve itself in wars between member species. Unofficially, they were afraid. Not of the Velthary. Of the humans. One ambassador spoke privately to another in a quiet corridor. He said that he had studied human history. He had read about their wars, their revolutions, their struggles. He had noticed something strange about humans. They did not fight like other species. When most species fought, they calculated costs and benefits. When humans fought, they forgot about costs entirely. They would sacrifice everything for victory. They would burn their own worlds rather than surrender them. The other ambassador asked what that meant for this war. The first ambassador did not answer for a long time. Then he said that the Velthari had made a terrible mistake. They had treated humans like any other species. They had assumed that killing civilians would frighten humanity into submission. Instead, they had done something far worse. They had made humanity angry. And an angry humanity was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The human fleet finished gathering. 10,000 ships hung in space, their weapons armed, their crews ready. Admiral Park Taiho stood on his bridge and looked at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, the Velthari were waiting. Somewhere out there, the murderers of New Bizan were sleeping peacefully, thinking they were safe. They were wrong. Admiral Park Taiho gave the order to move out. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving a trail of light behind them. In his quarters, Ensign Wang Dian wrote a letter to her mother. She told her not to worry. She told her that she was proud to serve. She told her that the people of New Bizan would not be forgotten. She sealed the letter and reported to her station. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the news feeds. They saw the human fleet moving toward Velthari space. They heard the reports of human determination. They wondered what would happen when these two forces finally met. They would not have to wonder for long. The first battle was only hours away. Battle of Kelrith Station began at dawn. Kelrith was a Velthari military base on the edge of their empire. It was heavily defended with orbital platforms, shield generators, and 300 warships. Commander Veth had sent his best officers to hold this position. He expected the humans to approach carefully, testing defenses, looking for weaknesses. That was how civilized species fought. The humans did not approach carefully. Admiral Park Taiho brought his entire fleet out of hyperspace at once. 10,000 ships appeared in Velthari space like a wall of metal and fire. Before the Velthari could even react, the humans opened fire. The Velthari commander at Kelrith sent a panicked message to his superiors. He said the humans were attacking with everything they had. He said they were not holding back reserves. He said they were fighting like they did not care if they died. He was right. They did not care. Lieutenant Yoon Jisu flew her fighter through the chaos of battle. She was 25 years old, a pilot from a small colony near Earth. She had never fought in a real battle before. But she had watched the footage from New Bizan. She had seen the children die. She had heard the soldiers laugh. Now she flew toward the enemy with no fear in her heart. Her squadron targeted the shield generators protecting the station. These were massive structures, heavily armored, designed to survive any attack. The Velthari believed they were invulnerable. Jisu's squadron proved them wrong. They dove through enemy fire, losing ships with every passing second. Jisu watched her friends die around her. She did not stop. She could not stop. She had a mission, and she would complete it or die trying. A Velthari missile hit her fighter. The damage was severe. Her engines were failing. Her weapons were gone. She had seconds before her ship broke apart completely. She had one choice. Jisu aimed her dying fighter at the largest shield generator. She pushed the engines to maximum and felt the ship shake around her. At the last possible moment, she ejected. Her escape pod flew away as her fighter crashed into the generator and exploded. The shield fell. The station was exposed. Human ships poured through the gap, firing everything they had. The Battle of Kelrith lasted 4 more hours. When it ended, the station was destroyed and every Velthari ship had been eliminated. Lieutenant Yoon Jisu was rescued floating in space. She had burns on her arms and legs. She had broken 3 ribs. But she was alive, and the mission was complete. When Admiral Park Tae-ho heard her report, he promoted her on the spot. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. The Velthari had lost their first line of defense. They had lost 300 ships. They had lost thousands of soldiers. And the humans had not stopped to celebrate. They were already moving toward the next target. Commander Veth received the reports with growing disbelief. His officers told him that the humans fought without tactics, without strategy, without common sense. They charged directly into enemy fire. They sacrificed ships to destroy single targets. They refused to retreat even when retreating was the logical choice. One officer said the humans fought like they were already dead. Commander Veth did not understand. He had studied human military history. He knew they were capable of clever strategies and careful planning. Why were they fighting like this? He did not realize the truth. The humans were not fighting to win territory. They were not fighting to gain resources. They were fighting because they were angry. And angry humans did not think about cost or benefit. They thought only about justice. The war continued for 3 weeks. The humans pushed deeper into Velthari space, taking station after station, world after world. The Velthari fought back with everything they had, but it was not enough. Nothing was enough. Human ground forces landed on Velthari military colonies. They fought in the streets, in the buildings, in the tunnels underground. They did not ask for surrender. They did not take prisoners from military units. They simply kept fighting until the enemy was destroyed. One Velthari soldier was captured alive and questioned. He was asked why the humans were so relentless. He shook his head and said he did not understand them. He said his unit had killed 50 humans in one battle. The next day, 200 more came. They said his people had retreated from a position, thinking the battle was won. The humans followed them and attacked again within hours. They do not stop, the soldier said. They do not get tired. They just keep coming. On the Galactic Council, the other species watched in silence. They had seen wars before. They had seen species fight over territory and resources. But they had never seen anything like this. The Corvani ambassador said the humans were illogical. The Mithran ambassador said they were self-destructive. The Pelori ambassador said they were insane. High Counselor Tovin said nothing. He simply watched the reports come in, one after another, each one more impossible than the last. The Velthari Empire began to crumble. Their allies abandoned them. Their colonies surrendered. Their soldiers deserted. Everyone could see which way the war was going. Commander Veth tried one last desperate plan. He gathered his remaining forces around the Velthari homeworld. He built defenses. He prepared traps. He told his people that the humans would break against their walls. Admiral Park Tae-ho brought his fleet to the edge of the Velthari home system. He looked at the enemy defenses and smiled. He had lost many ships. He had lost many friends. But he had not lost his purpose. He opened a communication channel to Commander Veth. His message was simple. You murdered our people. Now face judgment. Commander Veth responded with anger. He said the Velthari would never surrender. He said they would fight to the last soldier. He said humanity would pay for every life they took. Admiral Park Tae-ho cut the channel. He had heard enough words from the Velthari. He did not want words. He wanted justice. On Earth, General B. Cajun watched the fleet position itself for the final battle. He had lost count of how many soldiers had died. He had lost count of how many families would never see their children again. But he knew that the end was near. President Choi Sun-woo stood beside him. He asked the general if this was worth it. All the death, all the destruction, all the pain. General B. Cajun thought about the question for a long time. Then he answered. Ask the families of new BUSAN. The president nodded. He understood. Far away, the human fleet began its final advance. The Velthari homeworld grew larger on their screens. The last battle was about to begin. Ensign Huang Dayan stood at her station and thought about the people of New Bizaun. She had never met them. She did not know their names or their faces. But she was about to risk her life for them anyway, because they were human, because they were hers. That was enough. The siege of Veltha Prime lasted 72 hours. Admiral Park, Taiho did not rush. He had waited this long. He could wait a little longer. His fleet surrounded the planet in a ring of steel, cutting off all escape routes and supply lines. Then, piece by piece, they began to take apart the defenses. The Velthari fought with desperation. They threw everything they had at the human fleet. Ships, missiles, soldiers, prayers. Nothing worked. The humans absorbed every blow and kept coming. They did not charge blindly like they had in earlier battles. They moved with precision, targeting military installations while leaving civilian areas untouched. This surprised many observers across the galaxy. They had expected humans to burn the Velthari homeworld in revenge. They had expected massacres, destruction, chaos. Instead, they saw something different. Human soldiers landed on Velthari Prime. They secured military bases and government buildings. They captured officers and officials. They searched for civic names on specific lists. They were not there to destroy. They were there to judge. Commander Veth tried to escape. He disguised himself as a civilian and attempted to flee the capital city. Human soldiers found him hiding in a basement. They did not execute him. They did not torture him. They simply put him in handcuffs and led him away. He asked them what would happen to him. The human soldier who arrested him answered with 3 words: "You will see." Within 72 hours, the war was over. The Velthari government collapsed. Their military surrendered. The empire that had laughed while murdering humans now knelt before them and begged for mercy. Admiral Park Taiho did not give speeches. He did not celebrate. He simply sent a message to Earth, confirming that the mission was complete. Then he went to his quarters and sat in silence for a very long time. The trials began 1 month later. Humanity did not conduct the trials in secret. They broadcast everything to the entire galaxy. Every species could watch as the evidence was presented. Every species could see the footage from New Bizan played again. Every species could hear the testimonies of survivors, the confessions of soldiers, the excuses of commanders. Commander Veth sat in the courtroom with his head held high. He said he had done nothing wrong. He said he had followed orders. He said the humans had started the conflict by expanding too fast, by taking too much, by not respecting Velthari territory. The prosecutor was a quiet woman named O Minji. She did not raise her voice. She did not show emotion. She simply presented fact after fact, video after video, name after name. 2,300,000 names. She read them all. It took 3 days just to read the names of the dead. When she finished, she asked Commander Veth one question. She asked if he still believed he had done nothing wrong. He did not answer. The verdict was guilty. Commander Veth and 47 other officers were sentenced to life in prison. They would spend the rest of their lives on a human colony world, watched by guards, reminded every day of what they had done. Some observers expected executions. They expected humanity to demand blood for blood. Instead, humanity demanded something harder. They demanded that the guilty live with their crimes. They demanded that the Galaxy Remember. Ambassador Kim Yuna return to the Galactic Council 1 week after the trials ended. She walked into the same chamber where she had once been told to remain calm and trust the process. She stood in the same spot where she had shown the footage of dying children to ambassadors, who had yawned. Now, those ambassadors looked at her with different eyes. Some looked afraid. Some looked ashamed. Some looked at her with something that might have been respect. She began to speak. 2 years ago, she said, I came to this chamber asking for help. My people had been murdered. I asked for justice. You offered me a committee. She paused and looked around the room. Today, I return to tell you what humanity learned from that experience. We learned that the galaxy does not understand us. You do not understand why we fight. You do not understand why we die for each other. You do not understand why we could not simply accept the loss of 2 million people and move on. She took a deep breath. Let me explain. In human history, we have fought many wars. We have killed each other for foolish reasons. We have made terrible mistakes. But through all of our suffering, we developed one principle that we hold sacred above all others. We do not abandon our own. Her voice grew stronger. When a human child cries, we answer. When a human village burns, we rebuild it. When a human colony is murdered, we seek justice. Not because it is logical, not because it is profitable, because it is right. She looked directly at High Counselor Tovin. You called us emotional. You called us primitive. You said we did not understand how the galaxy worked. Perhaps you are correct. Perhaps we do not understand your way. But perhaps you do not understand ours either. She straightened her shoulders. Humanity does not ask the galaxy to fight our battles. We do not ask you to share our values. We only ask you to remember one thing. If you harm our people, any of our people, anywhere in the universe, we will come for you. Not because we love war. We hate war. But because we love our own more than we fear death. She smiled sadly. Remember that. She turned and walked out of the chamber. No one tried to stop her. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Other species began to look at humanity differently. Some feared them. Some admired them. Some tried to understand them. On the ruins of New Bizan, construction began. Humans rebuilt the colony from nothing. They built homes and schools and hospitals. They planted gardens where children had died. They erected a memorial with 2,300,000 names carved in stone. Ensign Huang Dehan, now promoted to lieutenant, visited the memorial on its opening day. She walked among the names, reading them one by one. She did not know these people. She had never met them. But she had fought for them. She had been willing to die for them. An old man approached her. He was a survivor of the massacre, one of the few who had escaped. He asked her why she had come to fight for strangers. She thought about the question for a long time. Then she gave him the only answer she knew. You are not strangers, she said. You were ours. That is all that matters. The old man nodded. He understood. Far away, Admiral Park Tai-ho retired to a quiet planet on the edge of human space. He had seen enough war for one lifetime. He wanted peace. He wanted silence. He wanted to forget the things he had done, even though he knew they were necessary. A young alien journalist found him one day. She was writing a story about the war. She asked him the question that everyone in the galaxy wanted to know. Why did humanity fight so hard for people they did not know? Admiral Park Tai-ho looked at the sunset. He thought about New Bizan. He thought about Captain Lee Mingyu and his final message. He thought about Lieutenant Yoon Jisoo crashing her ship into the shield generator. He thought about all the young soldiers who had died with the names of the dead on their lips. He answered the journalist with simple words. They were not strangers. He said, in humanity, there are no strangers. Only family we have not met yet. And you do not let family die alone. The journalist wrote down his words. She did not fully understand them, but she knew they were important. Across the galaxy, the story spread. Species who had never thought about humanity began to wonder. Species who had dismissed humans as primitive began to reconsider. And somewhere in the universe, in places where injustice still existed, beings began to ask themselves a dangerous question. What if we lived like the humans? What if we fought for each other? What if we refused to abandon our own? The galaxy would never be the same.